Hey, everybody. Thanks again for tuning into the Let's Talk podcast. Joining me today, I have Charter Nicholson. Actually, funny story about me and him. We met through a mutual follow on Twitter, well, now X. And so it started to, talk back and forth, kind of created almost a competition to see who could get monetized the quickest. It was him. And so it's been fun. What's that?
I said, was it though? Because
I think you did. I think you hit it the day before me.
Oh, okay.
I'm pretty sure. So I'll take credit. No, never mind. It was me first. Wasn't him. Yeah. So see, as you can see, he's fun guy. It's been really cool being able to use this platform to sync up with people that you meet online. So it's he posts a lot of investing stuff, but he's also a blue collar worker. If you can't tell already, if you're watching the video, he's got his work coveralls on. I've got my hoodie on, but he's actually at work doing the hard work. Without further ado, Charter, I'll go ahead and let you introduce yourself as well. Try to keep. We'll talk professional in a bit, but kind of give everybody at on LinkedIn. This will get posted on LinkedIn, on Spotify, all podcast apps, but also on Twitter. So anybody that follows you there, you'll kind of give them a personal view of what makes Charter.
Yeah, man. Well, first off, Travis, thanks for having me. I've really enjoyed getting to interact with you over the past couple months. The monetizing thing, I'm pretty sure we monetized within like a couple of hours of each other. Like it was not, it was crazy how close it was. But my name is Charter Nicholson. I run the Blue Collar Investments page on X and TikTok. I've got a little bit of short form content going over there. I'm married to my wife, Brittany, of 5 years. We have 3 children. I am a retired bomb disposal technician from the United States Army, currently an automation engineer at a steel mill. I've worn a lot of hats. I've made a lot of mistakes over the years, and it's just kind of led to where I'm at now. I just, no formal education or anything like that. It's just been me making dumb mistakes along the way, and somehow it, turned into a semi-intelligent person in my, middle adulthood, I guess.
I love that. And I like that there's someone, especially in the investing space on X, that is a blue collar worker, because I think that it's a great message to be able to, you're living it yourself, you're living it for your kids, you're living it for your wife, but a lot of people out there may also want to start getting more into investing, and maybe in your situation where they're in the blue collar world. And I think unfortunately it's been taught that those in the blue collar world, they just don't know much about the investing. And I think that being able to show that stereotype isn't actually true. You can do very, very hard manual work, but then you can also, you can eventually live a life like one of those tech moguls. So it's, I love that. I wish I have a lot of blue collar people in my family. Pretty much everybody on my wife's side, they're in construction, running, semi truck drivers, and so it's I wish that thought process that you have was a little bit more heavy, in my immediate family as well. So it's I think it's a great message, and so you talk about making a lot of mistakes over the years, but it sounds like things are going right for you. So I like that, but along this entire journey for yourself, what do you think has probably been? Let's start with the biggest mistake that you learned the most from.
Ooh, so right out of the military, I didn't know what I wanted to do in my life, and so I took the first job I could get, and I was actually selling cars for, I'll just say it's Hendrick Motorsports, very popular, car dealership, and they also have the NASCAR team. And so they are, your typical bosses you hear about, like, hey, my boss wants me to have an expensive car because it's going to force me to sell more. And they were like that. So the day I walked in the dealership, they're trying to but they're trying to shove a brand new Challenger, a brand new Charger right down my throat, just, get me hooked. And I eventually fell into it. I bought in 2014, I bought a 2014 RT Challenger. Loved that car. Yeah, had a great time in it. But 11 months later, I bought a 2015 Dodge Ram Eco Diesel.
Okay.
And then I got into an accident with it 9 months after it. And 9 months after I bought the Eco Diesel, I bought a 2016 Dodge Ram Bighorn, 4-wheel drive, fully loaded, everything else. So within 18 to 20 months or so, I bought 3 brand new vehicles.
That sounds like me.
And while I was working for the dealership, that was great because they were paying like $500 a month of my car payment, so it wasn't that big of a deal.
Yeah.
But ultimately, I hated that industry. I am a people person and I'm a very honest person, but I don't like being talked down to. I spent 8 years in the military. I've got a lot of self-respect. Like, you're going to respect me, I'm going to respect you. And I transitioned out of selling cars and moved into the service department. And the bottom line is, people that go to the service department are never having a good time.
Yeah.
And so it was just miserable day in and day out. So when I left the dealership, I went from having like a $200 truck payment to a $750 truck payment.
Oh, wow.
And it was fine, but it set me up for failure on my road to, in 2019, I filed for bankruptcy.
Okay.
And so buying those 3 cars is that is what set me up for the bankruptcy, and just a lot of bad financial decisions from the point I got out of the military on. And then when I got married to my wife in 2019, my finances changed significantly, and she couldn't find a job when she moved down here. And I went from being a single guy to a married father of 2, and then we ended up getting custody of my brother-in-law, and it was like I couldn't put food on the table. So that's what led to my bankruptcy, and that's kind of what started this whole blue collar investment thing. I took a step back and looked at my finances, and we just started over from square one.
Yeah.
But that's definitely going to be my worst money mistake, was buying new cars. That was the trap that got me.
All right. Yeah. No, I think that's a mistake a lot of people still are doing. They want the flashy new car, and they want it until they realize that's a $600 to $1,200 a month payment, and that can and I think that that's definitely the case for a lot of the younger generation. I was the same exact way growing up. I started with Jeeps. I was always a Jeep guy, but always wanted the next newest thing. It had to be new.
Right.
And it wasn't until we had our first child that I wouldn't say that I was fully healed and that I finally realized the error of my ways, but that definitely, and I think that's a common story nowadays too, is a lot of people start wising up when they have kids because, like you said, it's more mouths to feed, and it's not just a monetary stress. And I hold this view, as a father and as a man, is it's that mental stress as well, because in my mind, the man's wife can't have a job, obviously. My wife's a teacher, a freaking amazing teacher. But in my mind, the man is the one that's supposed to take care of those things. And so it's, and unfortunately, I think that leads to a lot of the marital issues. And so there's a lot of stress, extra stress, that I don't think is talked about as much. And I think that that's okay to talk about. And so, and when you're so young, that's normally when you want to make your mistakes, but as soon as kids, and a wife are brought into that, it's time to change. And I love that. So that was probably, that was I think that was a great rundown, kind of why you have the mentality you have now. So let's talk about your military career. What branch did you serve in?
Served 4 years in the United States Army, and then 4 more years in the United States Army Reserves.
Okay. Now, what did your go through from day one to when you left duty? what was that process for you like?
So
what were you doing
yeah,
when you were enlisted?
So I started off as I joined the Army, went straight into boot camp. The reason I picked the Army is because the Army is one of the few branches that allows you to go directly into EOD school, bomb disposal school.
Okay.
So I ended up just becoming a bomb technician right out of boot camp.
Oh, wow.
Went to my unit. 2012 is when I finally got to my unit because it took, I joined in August of 2010 and didn't finish up with my schooling until January of 2012. It's a very, very long, very, very hard school.
Well, sure it is.
So went through all that. I was in Afghanistan in 2013. We went to Afghanistan for 9 months, saw a lot of action, learned a lot about myself. But in the 9 months that I was there, kind of made me realize that, maybe the Army wasn't for me. And then ultimately, I ended up losing my best friend in Afghanistan. He was my first team leader. And when that happened, that really put things into perspective for me because, he left a very young daughter and a wife. And I, at that point, was single. And it's just like, I don't know that I want to do this and have a family. Like, this is just, I don't think this is going to be what's right for me in the long run. And obviously I wanted to make more money. Military members don't make much money.
Yeah.
So 2014, I got out. I ended up re-enlisting in the reserves, just kind of keeping it on the back burner. But really started my career towards that. And I didn't really do much in the reserves. I just kind of kept it there just to, keep being in the military as a, kind of like a, just like a safety net in case I just wanted to have easy access to go back in if the civilian career didn't work out. And then ultimately, it's crazy, but I ended up actually becoming an engineer because of the gym.
Okay.
I don't have a formal education.
Talk about that. That's intriguing.
So as you and I have discussed this before, but so I'm a competitive strongman. My best friend owns a gym, and he owns a gym close to where I was living at the time. And he posted a Facebook Marketplace, or not Facebook Marketplace, but he posted a Facebook ad for his gym. And I saw it and reached out to him, and I started working out with him. And at that time, I was still working in the automotive industry. I was working at like BMW or something at the time. And him and I were like building the strongman apparatuses together.
Okay.
And just spending a lot of time together. He's like, dude, you're really good at the mechanical stuff. You want me to see if I can get you an interview with my company? We're looking for a mechanic. I was like, yeah, sure, absolutely. But him and I hadn't really discussed my bomb disposal background and my actual background with robotics. And he was working for a robotics company, but he was a controls engineer, which controls basically the machines that tell the robots when they can do what they're supposed to do.
Okay.
And so I went and met with the CEO, and he was like, yeah, whatever, you're a mechanic, I get that. I'm more worried about this EOD background. Tell me about this. And so I started telling him about my background in robotics, like dealing with, disarming bombs with robots in Afghanistan. And basically he was like, look, you're smart enough to do that. I think you're smart enough to be able to program robots and teach people how to program robots. So I'm going to give you a shot. And so he hired me, and a week and a half later, I was teaching people how to program robots at Mercedes-Benz. And
that's awesome.
Worked my way up, became the senior robotics engineer at that company, and ran Mercedes-Benz training department for about 2 years. And then my wife and I ultimately decided to move back home, so I had to leave that job. But that's how I actually got into engineering, was strongman.
That's wow. Yeah, it's fun here in the chain of events. One thing leads to another, leads to another, leads to another. So, you growing up,
networking is powerful, man.
Yeah, I know. So growing up, you did the car dealership, and you served in the military before that. So it's you have a very very colored history. I like that. It shows a lot of depth to who you are, and kind of, and it just gives people a better understanding of who you are, and that's what. I didn't mean to smack the mic. That's what I wanted. That's what I created this podcast to really show, anybody with a public facing persona, just an ability to really showcase more who they are. So where are you at now? What are you currently doing? And what's a typical day-to-day look like for you?
So I'm currently working for a company called Nicholson Steel. It's a very good company. I am an automation engineer for them. So what I do is we don't actually have any robots here. I basically program machines to make liquid steel. So I write code in a language called ladder logic. I can write code in a couple of different languages, but mostly what I do is ladder logic. I do a little bit of Python coding for some of our screens and stuff.
Now Python, I know.
It's a hybrid position. Yeah. So, but it's a hybrid position. So, like on Wednesdays we have our down day. So the entire shop goes down for 12 to 20 hours. And during those 12 to 20 hours, most of it's 12. During those 12 hours, I will do some code changes if they're needed, but mostly I'm an electrician. So I'll go out and actually get hands-on and work on the machinery and stuff like that. So it's kind of cool because as nice as it is not to go out and get dirty, you have to go out and get dirty and do everything else. It can get really boring sitting in an office just, doing math on my whiteboard and, writing code and everything else. It's nice to be able to go out there and actually get my hands dirty and work with my electricians and work with my mechanics. It makes me a better software developer because I know what I'm actually having to physically program.
Yeah. No, I love that. I agree with you that, time spent behind a desk. I'm a desk jockey. I spend pretty much most of my day-to-day behind a desk, but being able to get out of the mundane and get your hands, I'm only getting my hands so dirty. My getting my hands dirty is deciding to be creative and make a podcast and do some video editing and stuff like that. But you can only sit behind and write so much copy. But you got to get those creative juices going, and with you just being so hands on, showing everybody that, especially that you still have it. You know exactly what you're doing, and taking pride in that. Just it shows the importance of your character, and the fact that you don't want to just sit behind a desk. You don't want it easy. You want to actually get your hands dirty. I love that. So, we talked about before. One of the biggest mistakes that you made that you learned from. What's some advice that you can give to someone that's starting out in the blue collar industry? Maybe they're a little fresher, they don't have as much life experience that you do. What's maybe 1 to 2 things of advice that you could give to someone to better prepare them, or maybe something that you wish you could have told yourself when you first started?
So, first and foremost, I'd tell them to look to your left and then look to your right and realize you're not in competition with them. You do not have to own the same things that these guys that have been working for 20, 30 years own. You don't have to have the brand new bass boat. You don't have to have the Chevy 3500 Duramax. You don't have to have the 6,000 square foot house that your wife wants when you only have like 1 kid or so. You don't have to have all of these things. If you live well below your means, you're going to find that your quality of life is just so much better when you're not having to stress about money, making payments. So that's the first thing I would say. Don't overspend what your finances are.
Yeah.
The next thing is with blue collar, you have the ability to advance yourself without formal education at every time. A lot of these companies don't care about my education level. What they care about is my experience level.
Yeah.
And so if you have the opportunity on a job site to learn something, learn it. Get a notebook. I carry one around with me, and it's just full of notes. I take notes all the time. My phone is full of notes. I carpool with the guy, and the guy I carpool with has been an electrician for 25 plus years. And he'll be talking about stuff on the way home, and I'm just sitting there texting on my phone, filling up my notes, just listening to it because I can't remember everything he says. So, don't be afraid to slow down and be like, hey, could you repeat that? Because I didn't quite get all that, and write it down.
Yeah.
So the cool thing about blue collar is a lot of the guys that go into blue collar learn in a very hands-on manner, and you're in nothing but a hands-on environment for you to thrive in if you just apply yourself.
Yeah. I love that. What's and maybe someone that is looking into, because I do want to talk about the investing side too more, because I think that you're a great resource for that. And obviously nothing on this podcast is financial advice. So, don't come after me for anything that may be said, but what's just a word of advice, maybe someone that, let's say they have decided, because I would never suggest people invest at any kind of significant level unless you have most of your other things taken care of. So let's just assume it is someone that is living below their means, and while they may not have a ton every single week to invest, they do have enough to at least start. What's maybe one thing that, again, you would go back to your younger self when you first started investing, a piece of advice that you would give on that side?
Well, first of all, like, if you have access to a 401k, get your employer match. Always do that. Low fee, low turnover rate index funds are what I like to do in my 401k. So, like, something that mimics the S&P 500 is always a great one. If you're early on, I'd say, don't even worry about bonds or anything like that, especially if you're in your 20s or early 30s. But the other thing on that too is I see this all the time, and like that, this isn't talked about near enough, but I can't tell you how many times I've heard over the past couple of years that, I'm going to take some money out of my 401k to buy some of this hunting land or something like that. Like, no. Don't touch your 401k. Don't do that. When you put money in your 401k, you're allowed to touch it at 59.5, not a minute before that. Yeah. Like that's the one thing I wish I could tell more people. That it's just okay for everybody, it seems like, that I talk to, for them to take money out of their 401k or take a loan out against their 401k. Just don't do that. Don't do that. Yeah. If you don't invest anything past your 401k, but you're maxing out your 401k every year, by the time you get to 50, 55 years old, you're going to be okay. You really are. For most people, especially if you're living in like the rural South, that money can take you a long way if you don't, lead an extravagant lifestyle. But other than that, if you want to, invest in a taxable brokerage account or something like that, I really like low-cost index funds, really like low-cost ETFs. You don't have to get into day trading or do options trading or anything like that. A lot of that stuff requires a lot of research, and if you're not investment oriented, it's probably not something you need to be, getting involved in. Completely. If at first glance you don't understand it, it's probably not going to be a great strategy for you. Yep. I've found that the more simple an investment strategy is and the less hands-on it is, the more likely you're going to be to succeed with it.
Yeah, I always say invest in what you know. That's kind of how I approach everything too. Is that's my personal. I pretty much only invest in companies that I buy product from, that I work with. They either sell my product or I buy their product for my product. So it's I try to stick right. That's what's always worked for me. And I made my first stock purchase in 2005 when I graduated high school. I would say that's where I learned my biggest financial mistakes on the stock market, especially early on, doing penny stocks. Okay. In the early 2000s. That was that was not when to play loose, and I did, and so but it's helped me learn. Unfortunately, I had to lose quite a bit of money. I still I look back and I'm like, that didn't make or break me. Obviously, I'm still here today, but gosh, I would have loved to have still had that money. But I learned my lessons. It's created a good portfolio for myself that me and my wife can be comfortable on. So I love that. So in closing, we'll go ahead and close it out here. I always end it with the guest giving a little glimpse into who you are when you're not you're not on X, posting, when you're not at work working. Obviously, you're a family guy, so you're with your family. But is there anything that you do? It's kind of like just your thing that kind of just helps you cut off from the world and just kind of reset. Whether you do it on the weekends or just whenever you can find time, especially being a dad of 3. I know you're busy. I'm a dad of 2, and I'm super busy. So, what's I'd say one of your biggest hobbies?
Well, I guess so. I've got 3 hobbies that I do all the time. So, strongman being the one, we've already covered that.
Yep.
During the summer, I'm a surfer. We go wake surfing in the Tennessee River.
Nice.
That's cool because my board is big enough to where I'm teaching my kids to surf. So I get, I get to put my daughter and my son on the front of the board, and then we're out there surfing and having a great time. And then I think you and I have talked about this before, but I'm currently doing a resto mod on a 1985 Dodge pickup truck.
Yep.
So I've still got some of my mechanic stuff that I'm dealing with right now. So just finished the paint job on that truck. We're starting on the motor swap now. We got to pull the motor on it. So those are the big 3 things that I do.
I love that.
Just
I love that.
Strongman, surfing, and building cars. It keeps me pretty busy, man.
Oh, I'm sure it does. I had a 67 that I just rebuilt everything underneath the hood, and that thing took me. I like computers and stuff, so I figured, cars, it's a bunch of parts that go together, and it's definitely not that simple, folks. So in doing what I did, where it would have taken someone that's competent probably a month, it took me like 2 years. But it was just one of those things that whenever I had off time, go in and tinker, put in new alternators and all that kind of stuff. So I love that. It's cool. I especially like the surfing. I've never done it. Never done like wake surfing either. So it's that's fun. So that's great. Great way to end it. I appreciate you coming on, Charter. It's great to talk more in depth with you and to finally actually have a conversation with you. Other than X, can you be found anywhere else? And any links for him, I will also include in the show notes.
My TikTok is the same as my X handle. I'm starting to do a little bit more short form content there. I'm not quite ready to branch into podcasting yet. Maybe one day down the road, but my TikTok, I put out a lot of the same information that I do on X there, and it's it gets kind of fun. We're able to track like my camping trip and everything through that. So I've enjoyed that.
I love that. Yeah. Awesome. And I'll make sure that's on the show notes and everything. So Charter, thanks for joining me today, man. I'm glad to have, I think you're guest 5 or 6 when this comes out. I can't remember, but thank you for being one of my single digits. I really appreciate it, man. Have a great time. Enjoy your family tonight and have a good night, man.
All right. Appreciate it, Travis. Yeah. Thanks for having me, bud.